And to me, it looked like very similar to doing PhD in, how to do the work rather than spending time in actually doing the work, because at the end of the day, yeah, I know this topic is controversial, but let me give a disclaimer. I don't want to impose my thoughts on anyone because there is no one solution for all the problems. And if it works for you, it works for you. If user stories works for you, it works for you. Okay, there is no second question on that. And this video is not for you. Because in this video, I'm going to tell you that in my opinion, my personal opinion, user stories doesn't make any sense to me. In today's world, in today's system development, in today's programming world, in today's, whatever things we are doing. Because user stories were created 25, 27 years back, if I remember it correctly. And at that point of time, there was only one kind of software, monolithic software. There was no concept of service oriented architecture. There was no concept of cloud. There was no concept of microservices. There was no concept of SQL, NoSQL, and different kind of databases, real-time time series databases. None of those things were existed at that point of time, but we still insist on using user stories today. Let me give you a very simple example. Let's give an example of an ATM. Okay, so to operate an ATM, you need to connect to a backend database. So can you come up with a user stories that, as a user, I want to connect to my backend bank, database so that I can fetch my balance. Can you do that? People do that, I know, but this is one of the most stupid user story I can, talk about. Because user interface, user behavior has nothing to do with backend connection with the bank database. Okay, it makes sense to create a user story saying that as a user I want to fetch my balance from the ATM machine. As a user I want to withdraw some cash from my ATM machine. As a user I want to change the pin of my ATM debit card from the ATM machine. All those things make some sense because these user stories kept user in mind, the end user in mind, and that was the primary reason for creating user stories, because all the monoliths that were created during that time was focused on creating one piece of software which serves the user's purpose. And at that point of time also, I don't believe that it was meant to create systems. Okay, it was not meant to create architecture, it was not meant to create design, it was not even meant to create interaction between databases and different kind of systems. It was only intended to make sure that whatever is expected out of the behavior of the system, the user gets the behavior. Nothing more, nothing less. But what we did is that we expanded user stories to such an extent that in this particular ATM example, for connecting to backend bank database, we say that as an intermediate layer, I want to connect to the backend bank so that I can fetch the DB or fetch the details. And over a period of time, the user keeps moving from end user to some process, some system, some DB, some, LDAP kind of thing. All those things came as part of user stories. Frankly, that doesn't make any sense to me. If it does to you, maybe, I would like to know why. Because user is what? The idea behind extreme programming user story is that the end user, the human, the end user who is using the system. And in all cases at that point of time, it was considered as a human who is using the system. But we have moved to a situation where user can be anyone. So if I'm working in a backend system, there is no user for me. There is no end user, okay, human user. I am being accessed by a process, okay, which is being created based on my architecture and design, and as well as the type of database I'm using. But I'm servicing the end user story that as a end user, I want to select an option in ATM machine to fetch my balance. Okay, that's fine. whatever work in backend I am doing, whether it is 1 day work or 1 year work or one small piece of work or 100 work items, it may be servicing to that user story, but that end user story, the user doesn't moves from end user to somebody in between. The front end process doesn't becomes the user for me, because front end process behavior doesn't becomes dynamic. User means end user behavior is dynamic, and that's why we need to take care of end user behavior. System, the way system is built, system is not built to make sure that there are internal users. No, we know the behaviors that is expected out of the system. Okay, the front end system will call an API. Beyond that, it cannot do anything. But end user behavior can be random based on number of options. There will be number of permutation combinations. So it made sense to create a user story from an end user's perspective, but not like this, whatever we are doing today. Again, if it works for all of you, it works for you. I have no problem with that. Okay, but it didn't work for me, and I had to spend a hell lot of time to understand what the hell I'm trying to do. What is the meaning of user? If user is there, where is the dynamic behavior of the user? It wasn't there, right? So beyond front end interface, user stories doesn't make any sense to me, and it's a futile effort to bring in user stories at each and every places. This just confuses and troubles software developers, which leads to bad code than supporting it to write some user behavior. Now I know you will ask me, okay, if I don't write user story, what should I do? I do have an answer for that, but I will talk about it in some later videos, that what you need to do, what you need to come up with to design your system in a better way. Okay, now there are other things also which doesn't make any sense to me. We are spending hell lot of time about how to split the story and how to make sure that stories becomes everything and other thing. And to me it looked like very similar to doing PhD in how to do the work, rather than spending time in actually doing the work, because at the end of the day it's the work that goes to the customer, not how you do it. How is important, but would you like to do PhD in how and just spend 1 or 2 days in actually implementing it? It should be rather reverse, right? But it is not the case. We are so much concentrated on the process part of it that we want user stories, as if user stories are everything. As soon as you come up with well planned, well written user stories, everything is done. The you are creating a zero defect software with this. Nothing like that happens, and nothing like that will ever happen with this. We need to first accept the problem to solve the problem, and once we come up with some way of doing things, and everybody in the world is replicating this, because the people who are mandating the replication of this particular you know theory or this particular way of doing things, they are not actually doing that. So they are not part of this, creating this and understanding whether it makes any sense or not. I was part of it. I'm still a software developer, and that's why today I am saying that it doesn't make sense. So, based on whatever I have said till now, if it still makes sense to you, it's okay. There is no argument, no debate on this. But it didn't make sense to me. I know there are many people with whom I had interacted, and I know there are many people who are listening to this video will agree to this, that it doesn't make any sense to them. And if it doesn't make any sense to them, there should be some better way of doing the things, right? It's ironic that you are trying to put one particular formula for front end, back end, artificial intelligence, machine learning, DB design, infrastructure design. Everywhere you are trying to put in some things which was made only and only, if not only, then predominantly for front end user behavior. Okay, so these are my thoughts on this particular user story part. Let me know what you think about it. So that's all I had for this particular video. Thank you all. Thanks for watching. We will meet again. Until the next time we meet, good day, goodbye. You take care.